Looking at how rats get into your domestic properties, I'm going to give you 3 examples in a detached, terraced and new build block of flats. So first one is the detached, but what we're going to do is all of these, everything's got to do with just like sewer pipes where your waste comes out of. In the detached property, we're going to look at a Victorian house, typically with no cavity wall, but really good quality sewage systems. So that's in the red. So if we look here, the sewage is coming out underneath the property, and then these 2 little bars here, that is the inspection chamber, basically where you can get into the sewage system, I suppose. Typically, when we're looking at this, we're looking at a crack or a break in the old pipework, so the clear pipework, and that can be for numerous reasons. Some of the common reasons are when we build a new extension and it's on top of the existing pipework or over the inspection chamber. It can do a couple of things. First one we're going to talk about, if we build the extension and then the weight of the extension cracks the pipework. We can see that often when it's not been looked after properly, or it's when it's been extended and plastic pipe's been put on there. Over time it can push down, crack the pipe, and as we know, there's a community of rats, a colony of rats living in our sewage systems, and that way, when the crack happens, they can get purchased and gain entry into the property that way. Then we've got the inspection chamber itself, and this happens quite often. It's a very common cause, and it can be an absolute nightmare to get rid of. But again, the extension's built, flooring's put on, and then when the inspection chamber, that can look like cast iron or stainless. In new builds, it's plastic. That lid gets taken off. Whatever work needs to be done, either an area hasn't been capped, so if there's a pipe that's leading into the property that hasn't been filled in, that's redundant, they can gain entry in that way. And or when the inspection chamber lid hasn't been placed back on. You won't believe how many times this has happened. Often results in all the flooring having to be ripped up. So good bit of advice here is, when we're building extensions, find out exactly what the builder's going to do with the existing pipework, the sewage pipework. Find out what they're doing with the inspection chamber, the lid, and can we get access to it in case there's a blockage, in case there's a problem with the sewage. Can we get access to it if the extension, beg your pardon, has been built over the top of that. We can often find here rats as well in between the floorboards. And again, with a Victorian property, there's quite often only one wall, there isn't a cavity. But when we build the extension, it's got a cavity wall in, so 2. Then if there's a break or if it's uncovered, the rats will gain entry and then find their way up into the first floor, second floor, whatever the extension is, through the cavity wall of the extension. All right, moving on to the terraced. I know we've got 2 here, but we're just simulating a terrace property. Again, in this situation, we can have the inspection chamber, but like a lot of detached Victorian properties who have their own inspection chamber, terraced houses quite often have 2, 3, 4, 5, anything up to kind of 8 and 10 properties of one inspection chamber. And we see that a lot in places like West London. So we've got, the issue is if this property has got the rat problem, then we don't know where the break is, or we can quite often we don't understand where the break is. And again, more often than not, there is a break in here. So a good thing to do, get a CCTV inspection in the inspection chamber, speak to your neighbours, find out exactly what's going on, find out and have those conversations. Are they having a problem? Can they smell something? Have they got similar issues of what you're facing? Are they seeing rats inside the living area? Having good conversations with your neighbours and productive conversations will really enable this to kind of fly through and get a resolution. Because we've got 2 areas here, we've got the property as a whole and the living area. The truth of the matter is, sometimes you just can't get a resolution with your neighbour, and you have to resolve the issue and just stop them from getting into the living area initially. Find out where the inspection chamber is as well. And there's things that I'll talk about in a second that we can do to prevent the rats from gaining entry. One thing to consider here as well is addition to this problem, you can still get it here as well, and this issue where we have multiple properties but one inspection chamber, so one place where we can, where we can do the inspections, where we can cap it, which we'll talk about in a second, is a build-up of waste as well. So especially when there's lots of properties, what we can have is, let's say we've got air vents here, and then we have a build-up of waste. Rats can gain entry under the floorboards and then go into the properties there as well. So we've got cracks, missing lids, missing air bricks, build-up of waste, cracks in properties over multiple. And then we're going to go on to the newer build flats. So not so much to do with the internals or the underground kind of sewage like we've got here. And this is something I want to talk about, and we've had it a few times where we've had kind of higher rise flats, maybe 5, 6 levels, and we've had rats at the top. And what's happened is we've been in the waste store, so the communal waste area. Rats have gained entry because of the bins, and they've been feeding off the bins. And the waste pipe that runs quite often outside the property or to one side and generally goes through where the waste area is, there's been openings. So the waste pipe itself, the rats have come in because of the waste, the literal bags of rubbish in the bins, and then they've found entry into the properties via the waste pipe that runs all the way to the roof, gains entry into the top loft or in between into the individual properties. So if you find rats in a setup like this, always look to the waste first. So the bin areas where the communal waste is being put, then we can look at things like sewage. But it can cause a lot of distress, this one, if we're not looking in the right place. So always a good place to start. And you can prevent all this by securing your waste bins, keeping the lids down. There's bungs underneath, especially the big industrial bins, keeping them on, keeping everything nice, safe, neat and clean in those communal waste areas. So things to do to prevent. So of course, keep everything neat, tidy, keep food out of sight. But in this situation, again, I'll just briefly go over the extension situation. Make sure that the builder has got a good plan. Make sure that the lids are put on. Make sure redundant pipes are capped. And I'll always have access to the inspection chamber, even if they're built over it with the extension. Internally into the sewage system itself, in the inspection chamber, these can be a foot deep if they're new build plastic. They can be 6 foot deep if they're Victorian. Is place a one-way valve, so waste can go out, but the rats cannot come in. In this situation, when there's a build-up of waste on the outside, air vents. That's a crude picture, crude drawing from me, but air vent cover, beg your pardon, over the air vents can help protect rats gaining entry into your property, especially when the time, winter's coming in. Rats need 3 things. They need food, they need water, and they need somewhere to live. And that can quite often be the warmest places, which are underneath our properties and within our properties. So fit some good air vents and cover all the gaps, as well as fit the one-way valve. And in the final example, the pipework that's going into the building via the waste areas. So if the pipe's going in and there's a void, make sure this is all filled in. You can do it in numerous ways, but always use a kind of abrasive or a solid membrane, like a metal mesh, to cover it first. Then you might put some cement, foam, whatever. There's a lot of ways to do it, but essentially ensure that the rats can't gain easy access via the waste pipes. So to recap, just go over everything. When we have a problem in your property, you want to get it removed, you want to eradicate the situation, seek professional assistance for that. Post the removal and eradication, you want to get it proofed and cleaned. So clear, disinfect. Rats carry numerous pathogens and a lot of nasty bits and pieces. Get that cleaned, get it proofed, seal the living area, protect the drains internally with one-way valves, get your air vent covers on and whatnot, and then always try and find the root problem. Root problem here, cracked drainage covers not being put on. Root cause in this situation, rubbish build up and gaps and entry points into the properties via the air bricks. And then in this one, just some simple proofing, filling gaps to prevent rats from getting into the living areas. I hope that helps.